All right, everybody. Welcome to the next episode of the PropTech Genius Show. And today's genius is Daniel Cunningham. Hey, how are you?
Genius, huh?
Welcome.
Okay.
You're a
All right.
genius.
We'll
See,
try.
because I
We'll try
know
to live
you're
up to that.
jealous. You're jealous of my PropTech, my podcast now, because you don't call people geniuses and I do. See, I'm just saying.
I call them professors, though. So it's
No,
different. Same
really?
idea. Yeah.
Same
It's the
idea?
same idea. Like you're recognizing that whoever is nice enough to come on the show is
Yes.
sharing something. They're teaching something, and you
Right.
either want who do you want to learn from, a professor or a genius? Both those things are good.
Exactly. I'm totally with you. I mean, it's super cool. I get some fun people on the show. I just had Kevin Stockman from Cherry and Ethan, I'm gonna butcher his last name, Chinovsky from Placer AI. Anyway, actually on Kevin, the podcast I did with Kevin, which you were in it. You didn't even know, but you were in it. I made a reference to you.
Oh, a
Yeah.
kind one, I hope.
It was a kind one. I was like telling him, I was like, okay, yeah, I was on this call with Daniel, and he was telling me, you like, Amy, I know you want $10 million. I know you want to have this money, but you're gonna make better decisions if you're not given all this money right up front. And I was like, yeah. I was like, but I know, and so I was, and Kevin's like, yeah, Amy, it's so true. And I'm like, I know, I love that encouragement. I was like, I still want the $10 million though. But yeah, no, I know, but it was great. No, you really did. You really helped me that day because it's a startup founder. You get beat up all the time. And so it's really nice to know that you're still on the right track. You're still doing the right things. It's going to be okay. That was really cool of you to do
Well,
for sure.
yeah. Well, thank you. But I don't know if we're jumping ahead in the story here, but they're for a long time I thought that was just something that I told myself as somebody who didn't raise a lot of money
Yeah.
up front. It's like, oh, I don't want the money anyway. I'll make better decisions. Um, but there are some and I won't name the names, but we've had competitors to the product to Leonardo 24/7 in the industry who did that. I can name one because they're everyone's disbanded. They're gone now. Which was Info Tycoon
Oh,
raised.
yeah.
Yeah, right. Info Tycoon raised a way more money than us. Started about the same time, and I, in my sort of objective third party wasn't in the room opinion,
Hmm.
they spent a lot of that money trying to find their market fit, uh,
Uh,
and and that is very difficult to do, I think, in multifamily sometimes because
mhm.
the end user can be very fickle in terms of how they want things to look. Right?
Right.
There's
Yeah.
right, change management is really hard. We can talk about that in this industry. Solving the problem that you think people want to solve is not
Yeah.
necessarily the problem that's top of their mind. And so
Mm-hmm.
Infotycoon blew through a lot of money and got themselves in trouble, acquired then by SitePlan when they
Oh,
were in distress. Um, and so great example. And I worried for Infotycoon had a way broader marketplace exposure than Leonardo did in the early days because of that. I
mm-hmm.
didn't have a marketing person for years, and
Right.
Info Tycoon had a whole marketing group there for a little bit. Anyway, and so I have seen that scenario play out where if you take the time in where you're lean and you are beta testing and you're going through quick revisions of the software and you're
Yep.
pivoting where necessary quickly without all this obligation to investors that you've said we're going to do this thing and here's the revenue we're going to meet. When you have the nimbleness to kind of recalibrate based on
Mm-hmm.
the quick iterations that you're doing, I think you will achieve market fit certainly faster and definitely more economically.
Well, I mean, and this goes great into kind of what I wanted to talk about was about scaling your company. But as soon as you take one VC dollar, they are down your neck to perform, right? I mean, they're like you have to meet these criteria. I mean, because I had a really candid conversation with Andrew Ackerman, and he was at Dream Ventures, and now he's at Second Century Ventures, and he's like, Amy, it's the blessing and the curse of the VC money is that yes, but they have quotas and mandates that they have to their investors. and therefore the companies need to like, they're going to be on you to perform. And so you have like certain things that they're going to be asking you to do. And so, yes, to your point, if you take that money early, it, like it can be a blessing or a curse, right?
Yeah, one of those mandates is to spend their money.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, no kidding. If you're not spending the money, like, what are we doing here? And it's not often prudent to spend as much as you can. And there's that
Hmm.
additional pressure with VC dollars to do that. The dynamic is slightly different with PE money. So we didn't take any
Yeah.
venture money.
Okay.
In fact, Leo didn't. We released our product. What we founded the company. I put founded in air quotes in 2011. I was still running. I had a management company that I had
Hmm.
started. I was still running that, and the
Yeah.
original idea was, well, I'm going to create this software for myself, create a
Right.
great management
Right.
company with this strategic advantage because of this software. So I was running both things at the time, but we eventually wow, this was in the early days. There was no Upwork, but there was a version of it. I think it was called Elance that
Hmm.
you could still get folks overseas to do some amount of coding work. And so I was doing all of that. I was paying, whatever I could, a couple thousand a month, maybe,
Yeah.
to have some alpha product developed. So from 2011 to 2014 was that kind of state,
Yeah.
or 2013 was just out of pocket, my own out of pocket, trying to get things,
Hmm.
trying to get something that we could use internally.
Hmm.
And then in 2014, I had the classic founders moment where I had a lot of great response to the early alpha product. I
Hmm.
remember there was a woman, Sheila Carter from Lincoln Properties, who had given me a great quote that I was using in pitches, and she was like, "Where has this been all my life? How did we work without Leonardo?" And that was the first notion that I had that we were onto something.
Hmm.
So, but it was this crappy alpha product that these guys had cobbled together overseas. I'm not a technical person. I'm a
Yeah.
civil
Right.
engineer by education, right? So I'm not a coder. So
Hmm.
I was I was giving bad product guidance, but nonetheless, we had something that resonated with people. And so in that classic founders moment, I sold my 401k and cashed it out in order to
Okay.
pay a proper developer
Hmm.
to turn this into a real product. And that was in 2014. So still hadn't raised any
Wow.
money yet, but was doing the scorched earth, like, I will not have a retirement now if this doesn't work out kind of move, which I don't recommend. We can talk about that more. I don't recommend it, but it is like, if you
Mm.
have the passion to do that, you have the passion probably to succeed. You still need a lot of luck, for sure.
Hmm.
Nonetheless, we did that and had the product kind of redesigned from the ground up based on what we learned.
Yeah.
And then the first money we took in was a high net worth individual in 2016 who then allowed us to take that product and go to market with it. So then we operated until, we had one other investor come in later. A client of ours asked if they could invest. We said yes. And then, 3 years ago is 2020, actually. 2020 is the first time I took any institutional capital. And that was private equity, not venture. So this,
Okay.
my long rambling story, this is what I'm getting to. So I didn't take venture money. So I didn't have that exact venture dynamic, but the private equity dynamic is similar,
Hmm.
but different in that the private equity, growth equity investors, they're not making the kind of bets that venture capital is making.
Right.
They are looking at companies that have already shown market fit, whatever that means.
Hmm.
Usually it means you've got at least three, usually typically 5 million in revenue. So that's their definition of market fit. Clearly, you
Hmm.
got something. You've got steady growth.
Hmm.
You have some level of mature product. And the idea is all we have to do is pour gasoline on the fire and this company will grow. It's
Right.
kind of a sure thing. So where venture, they're looking like 1 in 10 companies will succeed, but we'll get 100x on those.
Hmm.
Private equity is like, we want everybody to succeed, and we're going to get 3 to 5x on our
Hmm.
revenue. So the pressure is different, but is still there because it's more about um, growing the business at a steady state and maturing the processes and the business metrics and KPIs to a point that then the private equity firm can have a reasonable exit. So there's a different lens than venture. Venture is just like freaking grow. Okay, maybe this has
Mm-hmm.
changed a little bit in with what's happened in the market, but generally speaking, the historically venture is like grow at all costs, spend our money. If you spend it all and you're growing, we'll raise more. Like that was
Yeah.
ventures
Yeah.
private. Like you may not want, we may not want to raise anymore. We don't want to dilute. You don't want to dilute. We want to grow this business,
Right.
and it has been it's been a good experience for me. Generally, I know it's not all private equity and ventures. Not always a great, maybe not is rarely a great experience. I don't know,
Yeah.
but our partner's been great to work with, and I don't
It's
regret it.
Yeah, it just depends on the investor, right? Even on the VC land, if they're blowing and going and they're on to their next fund, they might not even pay attention to you, even though they invested in you early, maybe for the first year they'll pay. Yeah, it just depends. I've heard all these different founder stories of their investors and who pays attention and how long they pay attention, and then when they come knocking on your door. And so it's kind of
Mhm.
interesting. It's
Yeah,
interesting for sure.
or
Yeah,
worse, you get you're succeeding, quote unquote, in that you're surviving, right? You
right,
are growing but not fast enough.
right,
You're close to profitable but not profitable, and
right.
you're this zombie company who actually on its own could maybe raise a little bit more money and get there,
Mm-hmm.
right? You become
Mm-hmm.
a
Yep.
sustainable business, but venture won't bother with you. There, you become a zombie
Yep.
company. You're not going to be one of their 1 out of
Yep.
10. And
Yep.
so you get put in a different category and, left to
Yeah.
wither. I mean, that's what I've heard. Again, I haven't raised venture
Yeah.
myself, but from friends of mine who have, that's the stories that I hear.
Yeah. I mean, well, it did become tech winter, right? And so there wasn't a lot of VC chasing prop tech in last year or even early first quarter of this year. And so it's, kind of so private equity, has been filling the gap, which is nice. That you have those, you know, that people are willing to do kind of business investing or venture investing, even though they're not typically venture capital. Because it is a different ball game, right? I mean, I raise money for real estate investing, right? A real estate investor, if you're doing syndications or a fund, they stick their hand out 2 quarters after you do the investment. They're like, "Where's my distribution?" Like, where is it? And venture is not like that. It's like, no, you gotta hang on, peace out. We're just starting. Like, you gotta wait for a little while where we can actually, give you something. Like, give us a couple of years, right? So it's a different kind of a investment, which I
It
find
definitely
funny.
is. I don't know if you know, but I did my stint for a developer here in Los Angeles. I worked for a great developer called the Core Group,
Uh,
which is who brought me in to sort of run their assets for them.
okay.
And Brad Corzin was a was prescient in many ways, but mostly he had a talent for, in my opinion, he had a talent for seeing markets that had not yet matured and moving into them in terms of development, and then
Oh,
building great
yeah.
product with his wife Kelly Wurstler is an amazing designer. So they would build great, amazing product in areas that were unexpected, and then the market would come to them. Anyway, not to go off on that, but I witnessed firsthand a vibrant developer syndicator in that mode, and
Hmm.
um, you have to think differently
You
in
do.
prop tech, very differently. You're not
Uh,
the returns are not guaranteed. Like you don't do any real estate deal unless you're like 99% sure you're gonna make the return. Matter
yeah,
of
for
fact, we
sure.
used to
Right?
say we only got the deals where we made mistakes, because if you were really underwriting a real estate investment properly, it wouldn't look like it would pencil out because it's too competitive. You have to pay too much. So if you do a deal, you're pretty damn sure that
Mhm.
you're going
I
to
know.
read your ROI, your IRR is going to
Mm,
be in that whatever 8 to 10
yeah.
range, whatever you're shooting for. This is a different gig. Like
I
you
know.
have to, when you're raising money, you're asking people to take a flyer.
Chance.
Yes, yeah, a big chance.
Hmm.
We all know like 1 out of 10 startups succeeds.
Yeah.
Fewer than that have a superstar exit. So it's not guaranteed, but the ride is way better. I had to
For
say,
sure. Yeah,
yeah,
for sure. It is. It is. So talk about, okay, so you started out, you got a little bit of money, you're growing and let's learn all the lessons from scaling a company. So for us little startups that are like getting there, we're taking our baby steps. What have you learned?
yeah. I'll preface this by saying, Leo's not the first company I started. I mentioned I started a management
Hmm.
company.
Hmm.
Before that, I started a company that's still around today called Plant Prefab. It was called Living Homes when we started it.
Oh, cool.
And Living Homes designs and builds prefab, modern, green, sustainable homes.
Cool.
Um, and before that, in the 90s, my first company they ever started, I had this crazy idea in 94
Mm.
that people were going to buy music over the internet. I don't know, it's
Oh,
nutty.
no way. Were
Yeah.
you the original Napster? Were you the original Napster? Were you like the OG?
I was at the time I was we released our company the same time that Napster was going through what it was going through. At the time
Wow.
there was mp3.com had just launched. MP3s had just been
Mm.
invented. It's just been
I know.
and mp3.com, and there's something called Riffage, and eMusic was out at that time. So
Mm.
I was sort of in that mix.
Mm.
We were all too early, and anyway, but
Yeah.
um, there was been something significant to learn from each one of these, and I think it's one of the reasons I understand why first time CEOs um, are harder to find that succeed than those that have been through a couple rounds, even if they
Right.
failed. A
Right.
second time or third time CEO who has failed comes to the table with an amazing amount of knowledge that
Mm-hmm.
increases, I think, the chances of a successful company exponentially. But that said, um, I think the first thing we if I don't give a solid nod to this, I feel like the universe will punish me, and that is luck. I think just to sit here and with a bunch of hubris and tell you like, we did all these great things right, and that's why we're successful,
Hmm.
and we're so smart and brilliant.
Yeah.
Maybe some of that is true, but there's a lot of luck involved. A lot has to go your way. Market timing has to go right.
Yes.
Sometimes there's serendipity with respect to clients that you bump into, somebody that is willing to
Hmm.
take a chance on you, like all these sort of things. So
Hmm.
uh, I think above all, luck plays a role. Now,
Yes.
that
Yeah.
being said, you how you set the table so that you're ready to take advantage when luck comes along,
Hmm.
um, starts first with the people. You can have a great product, you can have a great idea, and if it's executed with B and C players on your team,
Hmm.
you're in trouble, because you in those early days you need people who are so bought into the concept of what you're doing that they will be willing to sacrifice evenings and weekends and
Yeah.
salaries, larger salaries they could get someplace else,
Yep.
for the dream that you've created for them. That first of all, the equity that you're sharing with them in the early days will be worth their time at some point. But more so than that is that the idea you're giving birth to, the company that you're bringing
Hmm.
forth, will be meaningful, life
Yeah.
changing for people, and that they will have a significant role in that. And so you need people who will just go to battle for you early on. You cannot suffer anybody who, I hate to say this, but it's true. You can't have people that crave work life balance. Like that is not what you need
They can
in
give
the
it to
early
him
stages.
later. Yeah, they can give it to him later, but not right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or not. Like, you know,
Mm.
sometimes a fast growing, hard driving company, which
Yeah.
is a thrill to be a part of, doesn't allow for work life balance. We try at Leo. I think, in fairness, we have things like unlimited PTO at the company, like we really
Hmm.
do, but we really do try to foster an environment where people can have a life.
Hmm.
But in the early days, it's not desirable. You want people to not have a
Yeah.
life. It's why it's hard to do it when you're married, or even certainly with kids, almost impossible. Married, very difficult. Serious Partner, challenging. You like
Yeah.
you ideally need to be on your need to be by
Yeah.
yourself in front of your desk working away
Yeah.
at the expense of your social life
Yeah.
and that's kind of the ideal scenario. So but at the core, people in the early stages, people drive whether or not your business succeeds or not. You can't do it on your own, for sure.
Yeah.
And then I think a close second to that is a very clear vision that can change and probably should change on a regular basis, but a very clear vision for where you're heading and who's responsible for each part of rowing to get you there. I
Hmm.
I read a book called Traction by Gino Wickman,
Hmm.
and in that book, Gino describes what he calls the entrepreneur's operating system, or EOS for short. And we adopted EOS fairly early on, not as early as I wish we had,
Hmm.
but I think that the principles of EOS, if you adopt them from a very early stage, will help you because they are there's nothing there's nothing mystical or magical about what they're recommending, but it's a process and one that's easy to follow but is impactful. And that process is about, and I'm not going to go into all of it, but I will simply say it's a process of setting your 1, 3, and 10 year goals, which is your vision. Like, where are we really going? And
Hmm.
then collapsing back down to this year, what do we need to do to get to the 1 year goal? And then looking quarter by quarter, what can we do in this quarter to move us
Hmm.
towards that goal? And
Hmm.
then further breaking it down to the each one of those individual goals. What are the milestones you need to meet in order to meet that portion of that goal that quarter? And then how you meet regularly to discuss progress and solve problems, remove blockages to success. That whole cycle um, is extremely valuable, I think, to business. Maybe at any stage, but at an early stage where it's so tempting to just run and gun and be like, go do your thing and I'll do my thing and then I'll see you next week. That's tempting, but having a vision, having a process will, I think, greatly improve your chances of getting where you're going. Stephen Covey's book I read years ago, right? 7 Habits was like, hey,
Right.
you don't want to climb the ladder and find that the ladder was leaning up against the wrong wall.
Right.
And so I think the EOS process helps avoid that. So people, and then I think then process.
When you're hiring somebody, what do you, what do you like? Is there, well, I've been in HR for a long time, so I get a good sense of like who would work well with me. I mean, obviously we're hiring for culture and all those great things and doing all that great stuff, but what is there one thing that you look for when you're hiring somebody to come onto your team or that you did look for? Um,
It's funny you say, is there one thing? Because there kind of is one thing that we look
mhm.
for, and it's integrity. Um,
Mhm.
we use a we use a it's called a 16 PF
Mhm.
personality
Mhm.
survey score when we're hiring folks, and broadly it gives very interesting feedback. Like, is this person extrovert, introvert? Do they like structure? Are they a creative thinker? There's that sort of range, and that's all interesting. And we do want to see like our salespeople like bury the needle on the socially nimble part. We want to see our QA team be very much like rigid, rule based, not so.
Mhm. Right.
But there's one thing that comes out of that survey that if it's a wrong number gives us pause and is generally a deal killer. We won't hire them, and that is called an impression management score. And what the
Mhm.
impression management score does is it I don't know how they do this, but it measures the extent to which the person who's answering the questions in the manner that you think you want them to answer the questions, and they're not being honest.
Ah, that's funny. That's cool that they can tell that. That's
Yeah,
really odd and creepy, but yeah, that's awesome.
yeah, it is. But we have there's a correlation between, so if somebody is really they're putting on a false front. They're not really giving you the real answers. They're telling you what you
Mm-hmm.
want to hear
Right.
so that they can get the job, presumptively.
Right.
That translates that propensity to sort of not be honest in
Mm-hmm.
moments like that will translate to somebody who doesn't accept responsibility
Right.
for, because things will go wrong. Things will, we're
Mm.
human beings, things will go wrong.
Yeah.
What you need to be able to do is you form a team of people who are willing to accept that and own it and be like, I screwed this up, and here's what we have to do to fix it. Like, and they need to be able to do that with impunity.
Right.
They need psychological safety to be able to admit that they made mistakes. And folks that have this high impression management score, we've noted, will do anything to avoid admitting they made a mistake. Um,
Mm.
and then
Interesting.
and then blame
Yeah.
others or point the fingers in other directions. Like,
Oh
you just can't
yeah.
have that.
It
So
yeah.
that translates to integrity in my standpoint. So you want team members who have great integrity and ownership for what they're doing. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
number one. Um, the book Good to Great talks about how you hire smart people and you
Mm-hmm.
let them guide things. You don't you kind of step back. If
Mm-hmm.
you're hiring people hopefully smarter than you, then they will decide where the business goes. And that's probably the other thing we look for, is really sharp people. It's been less important to me that they have exactly the right experience, have worked for exactly the right kind of company, but
Mm-hmm.
are they really sharp individuals?
So how do you balance the founder in you that might want to have, I mean, there's a balance of, hey, I'm the boss and I get to tell you what to do, and nope, I got to let you lead. And how do you take the back seat a little? How do you, like, there's a lot of pride. Let's be real. There's a lot of pride in starting your own company. There's a lot of emotion that goes into that. And then you start hiring people, and then you have to, like, listen to what they say, and you have to, like, take into account that they might want to go in a different direction than you, and you have to go, oh well, maybe they're right. Maybe we need to take our, I mean, you got to lead, but you also have to balance it with, you hired these people to come work for you, and they're telling you to your face, they're brave enough to tell you to your face that you're going in the wrong direction. So it's an interesting dynamic. So have you had experience that? Just curious.
I think that the most important trait of any successful entrepreneur should be the willingness, perhaps even eagerness, to set aside your own bias and your
Mm-hmm.
own, um, sometimes not vision. Because I think the vision is the thing that you're responsible for, but the
Right.
execution side, how things
Mm-hmm.
should be done, you need to be very eager to give that up to people that should be better at that than you.
And you,
Yeah.
yes, right?
So
Yeah.
so I have zero, and I really have zero ego about that personally. So for
Mm.
me, it's not difficult. We have seen super narcissistic, um, CEO founder led companies that are still very successful.
Mm.
Um, I don't think I don't think I doubt I doubt severely whether Elon Musk does a 360 review with his team, like, how am I doing? Right.
No, I doubt it. I
Right.
doubt it. Right.
Um, uh, so it can be done with, it can be accomplished with control, with a control freak at the helm. But I think
Hmm.
that I think you're reducing your chances of success if you are myopic enough to think that you have the best idea in the room about all things all the time.
Right.
Yeah. Vision,
Yeah.
though, I think the role of the founder remains, to continue to set and reset the vision for where the company is going, so
Okay.
that is really clear. I think if the founder is not the best person with the vision, yeah, this goes back to traction. There's integrators, there's different roles that the founder might
Right.
ultimately fit into. Maybe the founder, yeah, we should really caveat this. Look, maybe as a founder, your thing was product. Like you're just great at product.
Hmm.
You imagine a great product, and you're actually a terrible strategist. Then you really ought to step away from vision as
Yeah.
well. So
Hmm.
I guess I'm being a little biased because I think that probably my best strength is the vision of where the company should be going and what we should be doing, what our focus should be, and that sort of thing. And then I look to others to really perfect the execution. Um, uh, but I think generally speaking, if whatever your strength is as a founder,
Hmm.
um, there comes a point very early on where you must consider the opinions of other people and put your ego aside. And
Yes.
um, and it's your baby, and so that's kind of hard sometimes,
Hmm.
especially if somebody comes up with a radically different idea about how your baby should grow. Um,
Or they call it ugly, or all those other things. Like, I can't believe you did this way. You
yeah.
know, yeah. It's like, yeah,
Mm-hmm. And
no, I'm
and
with
if you
you.
hire smart people, they probably will at some point, and you have to
They
be,
will.
yeah.
They will. They'll
And
be like
you
this.
should give them an environment where that's okay. That's
Yeah.
also really important.
Yeah, no, I mean, so I did like you. I started my company and I didn't have a CTO, and I got the product people and I had him build it. And then I get my CTO, he goes, Amy, you built this all on all the wrong tech. Your tech
Yeah.
stack is wrong. And I was just like, what? Really?
Yeah.
He's like, oh yeah, yeah. Because what you're trying to do, you should have done this and this and this. And I totally trust him. And I was like, okay, so how do we fix this, Steve? Because we're going to have to fix this and it's going to be super painful and I will never do this ever again. But yeah, I mean, and you have to, and I had to go, but that's an easy ego thing, right? Because I'm not a tech person. So I can easily let my ego go aside and just kick myself because I made the wrong decision early on. I think the harder ones is around the stuff that you're really, really good at. Like, I know the product. So am I going to listen to somebody else who's telling me my product idea is stupid? Right? I don't know, right? So or someone saying, "Hey, you probably should," it's interesting the emotion that goes into it, but I think it makes you, but I've always appreciated candor. I've always wanted people on my team that would tell me to my face, "Hey, Amy, you're being dumb. Like you need to look at it this way, or you need to look at it that way, or whatever that might be." But yeah, I think it gets harder when it's something that you think you're good at, you know,
Yeah.
and something that you're not good at. It's okay. All right. I was an idiot. Okay. All right. But if it's something you really think you're good at and somebody's telling you to your face that that's a dumb idea, I think it's an interesting that's harder to let go on your ego, but who knows?
Yeah. Depending on the radical nature of what you're trying to do, there is a place for saying, look, I respect what you're saying, but I'm really doing something different here that I don't expect you to understand fully and
Yeah,
appreciate. But you got
it's
to
true.
trust me. I mean, that there are moments for
Yeah.
that. I think um, I imagine that Sam Altman went through that, or although he didn't found OpenAI,
Oh,
but he came in. But
no.
the LLM
Yeah.
model failed for a long time, and so somebody there. That conversation was happening somewhere.
Hmm.
Like, hey, this is not working out. Like, it's going to work out. I know it doesn't.
Right.
I know it's not giving the results we want now, but it's going to work out.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
sometimes I do think there's a place for that. Um,
Yeah, for sure. So, well, what one of the jobs of a CEO that you cannot offload, I don't think you can, is you have to be the person that's always raising the capital or always looking 3 steps ahead of your company. So, have you had any major lessons learned around, like, did you ever get in pinches where you're like, man, we're feeling it because you might outrun your cash, right? I mean, because you're growing and blowing and doing all these things. I've had that as I was growing companies where we were undercapitalized a little bit because I was like, oh man, we got here faster than I thought we were going to. Now I got to go chase some money, right? Have you felt that as you're scaling?
for sure. I think um, a mistake that I made at one point along the way was um, you do not want to get to that point were like, oh crap, like we're running low on cash.
Right.
Um, where you feel when you have to go then ask for that money, and you are at a point where you're desperate, right? You're
Yes.
in need. Um, a friend of mine, Orrin Claff, who he wrote a book called Pitch Anything, and Orrin and I would, and it's his one of the running themes in the book is do not feel needy. Like you cannot feel needy.
Mm,
And so one of the times that I raised money, I was too needy because I'd let it
um,
go. I let it go too long. And the
right.
reason I let it go for too long was partly I thought we might be able to thread this needle.
Yeah. Yeah.
We might be able to, and I would like to thread the needle
Mm-hmm.
if I can. But I should not have counted on that. And I should have started the
Mm-hmm.
process of talking to people while I was like, hey, things are going well. We've got $1 million in the bank. Um, but if we don't hit these sales projections or these things don't happen, like
Mm-hmm.
in a year from now, I don't know, we might need to raise money. So I want to start talking now about, I want to start planning for that. Do you want to be part of that next round conversation? Like that should have started earlier instead of
Uh,
like, hey, I'm just a few months away from
mhm.
being in trouble. And do you want to, do you want to write a check?
I'm so glad you're vulnerable and willing to say that because, like, so many founders go through that, right? Where they, are just expecting it to be there. Can you imagine all those people in 21 that raised capital and then had to, like, they ran through the runway of their capital and in 23 they tried to raise and they couldn't find it? I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like, no, there's one of the things that you can't foresee. We bought a company earlier this year that had some really great tech, and they had a really great idea.
mhm.
Um, and the founder's timing was just bad. Like he was,
Yeah.
it is a smart guy, built something really cool, but he just built it in this time frame where you would have naturally have assumed, hey, once I've got this out there in the wild, I'll be able to raise $2 or $3 million and start to
Mm,
scale. And the
mhm.
rug just got pulled out from under him.
Yeah.
And that's just unfortunate. Frankly, I mean, Amy, you started your company kind of not at a great time either from that perspective. I mean,
No.
right.
No.
So you're going through it, but you're if I can if I might add, like he was in a point where like they were going to crater, like they needed the money.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
In
yeah.
fact, he'd already told some clients like, hey, I think we're going to close up shop. And I was like, I wish you hadn't done that. Um, so
Yeah, not a
whereas
good idea.
so he was just a little bit further along on the curve, and
Further
it's where
along in
he,
me. Yeah,
yeah, you're at a point you can survive and you can still grow. You'll
yeah,
just be frugal about it. He
mhm,
was like, he was in a different inflection point.
yeah.
So I'm not saying be thankful maybe to you, but
Yeah, but
maybe there's a
maybe,
silver lining.
maybe, maybe.
Yeah. So yeah.
Maybe
So
I'm not going to catch wrong timing. Maybe it'll be good, but no, but I feel you on the lucky part, right? Sometimes that is. Sometimes he has really cool tech and it was just the wrong time. So I get the whole part about the luck, right? Because
yeah,
there is sometimes
great
it plays
example.
into it. Yeah, great example. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. The other thing that I think is should be a principle of anybody who's willing to who's interested in starting their own company is to really look at the market opportunity, um,
Hmm.
because it takes just as much energy to, I don't know, start a landscaping company, where you want to go out and do landscaping, right? Like that still takes a lot of energy to like when compared to like, hey, I'm going to start a prop tech company, right?
Right.
And you still got to, as a landscape company, you still got to work to find clients, and you got to
Hmm.
make ends meet, and all of that stress. It it's not exactly the same, but the point I'm trying to make is like you have only so many hours in the day, right?
Yeah.
And you can expend those hours
Right.
growing a company that at best, like maybe you can make $1 million a year, right?
Right.
Or you can spend that same amount of time in a addressable market that's in the billions of dollars. such
Mhm.
that if you're moderately successful, you
Mhm.
can make tens of millions, right?
Right.
And so be thoughtful about the market. I've met plenty of people with great ideas, great business. Like, I'm solving this problem, but that problem is, to use kind of venture terms, like it's it's a pill for an ache. It's not a cure. And if
Mm.
you're if you're if you're if your product is a pill that people will take to to address a pain point, but it's not a
Mhm.
cure, you don't have a large scale um, enterprise level business that is
Right.
going to make you uber rich. And
Right.
maybe people want to just, they're altruistic about starting their business. They don't want to become rich. But part of the reason we start businesses is we want to create a certain lifestyle for ourselves that
Yes.
generally cannot do or achieve, working for somebody else, right?
Uh,
Um, and so yeah, so be I guess thoughtful about, be very honest with yourself about the product that I'm creating. What is its market opportunity, and
right.
how likely is it that my solution is the cure and not going to be treated as just a pain point pill.
So yeah, no, that's such a good lesson for sure. But how do you address the like, when you're in it and you're doing your product creation and you're doing all those great things and you just feel like you're not going fast enough, like you're gonna miss your window. Did you ever feel that? Like you're like, oh man, we're working on this and we're working on this and we're working on this, and then we're gonna get all these competitors and we're gonna miss our window. Did you ever feel that at all?
I'm feeling that as we sit here. I feel that every day. In fact, the day that you
Okay,
don't,
I'm not the only one that I'm not crazy. Okay, all right, good.
yeah, yeah,
All
I,
right,
I
yeah.
that's what keeps me up at night,
Yeah,
every night.
yeah,
Since I started the company, is I'm not gonna get to market fast enough. I don't have enough money to market it widely enough. I don't have
right,
enough people to sell it quickly enough.
right.
All of those things will haunt you every day. Um,
Mm, interesting.
and so it's about, I think, prioritization and sort of a realistic expectation of what you can achieve, and
Hmm.
setting as high of a goal as possible,
Hmm.
for each of those things.
Yeah.
So your the highest possible expectation for sales, your highest expectation for deliverables on the product side, your highest expectation for customer service and
Hmm.
delighting your customer. How can you service them and all of. Um, you set the highest bar you can, and then
Hmm.
there's not much more you can do to that except um, uh, execute and hope that somebody's not
Hmm.
out there um, doing better, executing better, faster. Like, because
Right.
sometimes you can't control that. Um, it is it it is sort of the one of the things that we don't talk about probably as entrepreneurs is the stress, and the toll it takes on you individually to live that way.
Hmm.
Because especially if this company, the company that you're starting, if it is your first company, if this is your shot, if this is your retirement, if you don't have,
Yeah.
whatever, however much money you feel you have to have in the bank to retire, like if this is it,
Hmm.
and if it doesn't go right, you're
Hmm.
that is an emotional burden that many people are not prepared for.
Yeah,
Um,
nor can many people handle. Like we're entrepreneurs, and the rest of the world looks at us like we're from Mars. Like we are not normal humans because we're willing to put up with all of this uncertainty and all of this risk and all of this burden that we go and we face every day because we're entrepreneurs, right? And we're
yeah,
startup founders. And no, no, I totally get you. Like, look, I mean, I'm a single mom. I have a little kid and I'm a startup founder, and we go through uncertainty all the time. And does it suck? Well, yes, it sucks,
right.
but you just kind of push through because I know what it is that I'm creating and I totally believe in it. And all those great things. But yeah, it's very tolling on you, and you have to be very, very resilient. But you also have a little cray cray in you because you're willing to go do it, right?
You have to be a little delusional, right? Because
Yeah, a little
you have
bit.
to, yeah, you have to believe that somehow you can beat the odds, that something about your
Yeah,
idea is better than the rest.
yeah.
Um, this is another thing I would suggest for you as well, Amy, if you're not in a group like this right now. But there's a national group called Vistage, which is a group of
Mm-hmm.
CEOs. There are CEO peers who come together on a monthly basis and they help process issues. You have to have a certain level of revenue to get into Vistage proper, but there are baby versions of this peppered throughout
Mm-hmm.
the United States that I would encourage any CEO, any founder of a
Mm-hmm.
company to join, because it is the only place where you really have a chance to talk about what it the emotional toll it takes being in an executive CEO founder position, and then just all
Mm-hmm.
the other bullshit you have to deal with in running a company that
Exactly.
you can't talk to anybody else about, including your spouse, right? You can't, or
Right.
your partner.
Mm-hmm.
You have very few outlets to kind of bounce things off of, and this serves these groups, these Vistage like groups serve a great purpose for that. But I was in a small one. I say small, it wasn't small, it was like 18 people, but it was for early stage companies.
Mm-hmm.
And these were all people coming out of the ground with some product idea.
Yeah.
And there was, at any one time, there were 18 people in the group, plus or minus. And over, I don't know, a span of 3 years of being in that group,
Mm-hmm.
I saw a number of divorces that came about as a
Wow.
result of
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
I saw a number of bankruptcies, people that had thrown everything they had into their
Mm-hmm.
business. I saw, I remember this one guy who had been a successful investment banker and in a prior life, and had his prized vintage Porsche that he had to sell to make payroll. There were tough decisions being discussed in that group,
Mm-hmm.
being made in that group, and I will go so far as to say lives ruined,
Yeah.
um, in pursuit of this dream, of their idea and their passion. And this, it is not very glamorous for
Mm-hmm.
most people who get this.
Mm-hmm.
Now that said, I won't say who, but the founder of a very successful now fast fashion company was in one of those groups. He's worth
Mm-hmm.
$1 billion. The
Mm-hmm.
founder a of an entertainment brand was in one of those groups, who's now
Mm-hmm.
worth many, many, many millions of dollars. Um, uh, so you know, intermixed in 50 people that I
Mm-hmm.
saw come through that group over the course of 3 years, intermixed in there were people who hit it out of the park.
Yeah.
And that's, we're all hoping that that's us, or that you're
Mm-hmm.
hoping that that's you, but you must be girded for the fact that the odds are against you, and just be
Oh,
ready for that.
for sure. Yeah. No, I mean, it's definitely an interesting time. And I don't, yes, I mean, you have to understand that it's a risk like anything else. I mean, I guess I've been an entrepreneur for a long time. So I just always think I'm going to land on my feet. Maybe that's my one, thing is I'm just always going to land on my feet. I'm going to figure it out. Right. That's kind of how you do when you're an entrepreneur. You're just like, I'll figure it out. It's all good. It's all good. I'll figure it out. That'll be fine.
Yeah.
That's kind of how you go. For
Yeah.
sure. Well, yeah. All right. So if you were to give advice to some person who's like, I've got this great idea. I'm gonna go start a company, and Daniel and Amy are super cool. I want to be just like them. So what would your advice be to somebody who wants to be a startup founder?
Well, given what we've all already said, like in terms of just
Yeah,
having the right, like go into it with the right mindset.
right.
um I think the best advice that I can give is to make sure that what you're doing aligns completely with the thing you are most passionate about. You with all the obstacles that you will run into if you don't believe in what you're doing. If you just think you
Mm,
found if you think you've just found a quirky, opportunity, a loophole somewhere, some unmet need in a business that you don't understand, uh, but you just think, I can exploit this and start a business. It's not going to work out for you, probably. Um,
yeah, exactly. Or some guru tried to sell it to you on TV. Probably not a good idea.
no,
Yeah.
that's right.
No. Mm-hmm.
It's because what you're going to go through
Mm-hmm.
will require supreme belief in your own vision
Mm-hmm.
and I think supreme understanding of the problem and the environment in which you're trying to solve it.
Right.
So those factors have to be present for you to engage in this kind of company. I'm not
Right.
in this kind of company being a prop tech or a technology startup company. I'm
Right.
not talking about like somebody wants to start a consulting firm, and
Mm-hmm.
that's a very different kind of gig.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, so that the vision and the passion and the competency in what it is that you're trying to where you're trying to innovate
Mm-hmm.
is you don't have those things. It's everything else is a non-starter. Um, to that, I would add a word of, as if there's not been enough words of caution. I will add another
I
word.
know, right? I know. I gotta add some more.
Um, and that is the if you're going to if you're going to have a co-founder,
Mm, good.
if you're going to have a co-founder or one or more, um, you need to get to know them before you commit to really going forward in this journey, because
Mm-hmm.
um, so many companies are formed from a council of the willing, like who's willing to do this job with me, and right.
That is such a good phrase. Oh my God. Like, it is so true.
Yeah,
It's like, I need a co-founder. You're at a pitch event. I need a co-founder. Oh, you look like a good one. Come
yeah,
on.
yeah. You are also delusional. Come along with me, and we will do this together. Um,
Yes, exactly.
if you are
It's like you're married to these people almost. Like, come on, they're on along the ride with you. It's like,
you
yeah.
yeah, you will go through more than probably sometimes with your spouse. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
yes, if you are unequally yoked with
Yeah.
your co-founders, um you will A, be giving away precious equity, B, you would be extremely frustrated, C, when it comes time to, as it will at some point, to sever the relationship with them, it can take the company down.
Yeah.
And
It's
so
true.
be mindful of your co-founders. Um they will they can be the cause of the demise of the company if you've not chosen wisely, and they can make your life way more difficult. How's that? I mean, there's so many. I
That was like the best one. I mean, it's like it, but it's also like it be mindful of who your first strategic customers are. Like, who are your beta customers? Because they're basically almost your unofficial co-founders because they're helping you lead the next gen of your product, right? Who are your first investors? Who are your first anything? Because they're really, really going to determine whether you succeed or fail, right? So I think that's a super cool lesson for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I think all those are true. But the person or people that you're
Yeah.
in the trenches with every day will have the greatest
Hmm.
impact upon the trajectory of your company.
Yeah.
Don't
Mm.
choose them wisely.
Yeah. No, that's great. Great idea. All right.
Not speaking specifically to any co-founders that I've ever started a company with, but you know who you are.
That's too funny. That is so funny. That's crazy. All right. Well, this has been super fun. This has been awesome, Sauce. Thank you so much for coming on my show. It's been very, very cool.
Thanks for
So
having
if
me, Amy. This
any,
is fun to
yeah,
talk about.
yeah, for sure. So if you were willing to have somebody reach out to you, how could they do it? If somebody wanted to talk to you about whatever they want to talk to you about.
Yeah, LinkedIn is actually probably the best way to reach out to me. I get
Hmm.
so many email is quickly becoming, frankly, useless as a communication medium. We can talk about that
Yes.
some other time.
Hmm.
So yeah, so reach out to me on connect with me through LinkedIn. Um, I read messages from LinkedIn far more than I read messages on email. In fact, we were
Yeah.
confirming whether we were gonna
Yeah.
the
Was
time
on
to talk
LinkedIn.
today. I messaged you on LinkedIn.
I
So
know. I use it all
yeah,
the time too.
yeah.
Yeah.
So you can
Very
find me on
cool.
LinkedIn.
Very cool. All right. Well, thanks again for coming. It's so awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Amy. Take care.